Good evening, I'm Dan Burwood. Thanks for joining us. Israeli warplanes reduced buildings to rubble and sent people in the Gaza Strip scrambling for safety today as Israel steps up airstrikes on day 4 of its conflict with Hamas. It's in retaliation for a surprise and deadly attack by Hamas militants on Saturday. That multi-pronged assault marks the single deadliest day ever for Israel. More than 1,000 Israelis and almost 900 Palestinians have been killed. Israel says it's finally secured its border with Gaza. The territory is now under a total siege by Israel with a blockade of food, water, fuel, and medicine. Meanwhile, rockets continue to rain down on Israeli cities from the territory. A Vancouver man, a family and a community are grieving after learning a local man is among the hundreds killed in Israel. As Leanne Young tells us, 23-year-old Ben Mizrahi was attending a music festival when Hamas militants attacked.
A somber scene at Vancouver's King David High School. They're remembering one of their own.
Just gutted to hear this news. Ben was a much loved member of our community. He was a big brother to his siblings. He was very well liked by all his teachers.
Messages of support cover the walls. Ben Mizrahi was killed in Israel over the weekend. He graduated in 2018.
Involved in absolutely everything. If you look at any of our yearbooks, while Ben was here, he's pretty much on every page. He loved to do everything, and he was kind, really loved to help people, and he really loved Israel.
That connection prompted him to move there after high school, but sadly, the 22-year-old's life was cut short. Over the weekend, Hamas militants attacked while he was at a music festival in southern Israel.
We learned Saturday that he was missing. We were all hoping for the best, that he'd be found alive and safe.
Mizrahi was killed along with hundreds of other young people. Chaplarosh is still in shock. His friend since high school is gone.
He was full of life. That's kind of the one thing I remember about him is just, he was always smiling. He was always laughing.
Always up for an adventure. A talented basketball player and a big brother to 3 siblings. Friends say Ben and his family have deep roots here.
The Vancouver Jewish community is a very tight-knit community. It's very painful. We feel this loss very, very deeply.
This neighbor, who's also a rabbi, held vigil with Ben's parents just before they flew to Israel to search for him.
There's a state of shock. In fact, there's not something that you can't really speak about it even. There's just silence. The pit of worry brings about silence.
Infeld says before Mizrahi's passing, his family heard he was using his skills as a military medic to help others. Since then, there's been an outpouring of support.
I just want to send out a message to Mr. Mizrahi's family and friends that we stand with them, and we stand with Israel in the face of these awful attacks. And it is profoundly disturbing to all of us, and we're grieving with them today.
The Mizrahi family are preparing now for Ben's funeral, scheduled for tomorrow. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
Palestinians who stand against Hamas are also concerned about their safety. Mohammed Fayed moved to Canada as a political refugee about a year and a half ago. He had to leave his 2 children behind.
I can't control myself. I'm dad, so as I am dad, I am very concerned about their safety. And I am very worried and fear that I'm going to lose them at any moment. And I wish my voice can reach to IRCC or government in Canada in order to just make anything for my kids, just to make sure they're still alive and make sure that if they can do any process for them to take him out from Gaza as soon as possible.
Ottawa has said it will start airlifting Canadians out of Israel via Tel Aviv in the coming days. The flights will be for Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and their immediate families. The Foreign Affairs Minister says they're working on other options for people who cannot get to the airport. The Israel-Hamas conflict, as we see, is affecting many other people in BC. Amal Johal is one of them. She's a Palestinian woman from Port Coquitlam, also worried for her family's safety in Gaza.
All my family live in Gaza. The situation is very bad. Their houses is shaking. There is no electric, no water, nothing in their house, even no food. I'm scared every day. I wake up, I said maybe I lose my dad, I lose my sister, I lose. Maybe I will lose him. I want to give Mr. Trudeau a message, please. I want him to help. I've been living in Canada 27 years here. I feel happy, I feel safe. I want them to come here to live as me, to come here, live peace life. If somebody attack Canada or want to take the land from us, of course we're gonna protect our country. But I'm living happy life here in Canada. Please stop the war as soon as possible.
Let's take a larger look at what's happening right now. Israel's military has revealed disturbing new information about the attack by Hamas in one community. Chris Brown is in southern Israel reporting on day 4 of the Israel-Hamas conflict. And a warning for you, some of the images and descriptions in this story are disturbing.
As Israel continues to count its dead from Hamas's surprise attack, its military is revealing some of the horrific ways people died. This is Kfar Aza, where the bloated bodies of Hamas gunmen still lie in the open.
You see the babies, the mother, the fathers in the bedrooms, in the protection rooms, and how the terrorists kill them. It's not a war, it's a massacre.
Some images are just too awful to show, with blood everywhere. Dozens of Hamas militants stormed in, killing the guards, burning homes and butchering entire families, say Israeli soldiers. Remains are only now being removed because the last gunmen were only killed a few hours before this visit. On that awful day, medic Shalom Abitan was sent to Kfar Aza as a first responder. He didn't realize he was arriving at a massacre and was further stunned to be handed one of 2 babies.
They were screaming, they were dehydrated. The soldier told me that the parents are not with them anymore. They were all captured or they were killed. Until then, we were dealing with people without any hands and shot in terrible conditions. It was suddenly you're getting a baby, a small baby, and you feel that you can give him the feeling of being safe.
Hamas's inhumanity is also now visible from the dash cam footage of people shot in their cars that morning, their vehicles coasting to a stop with the drivers dead inside. Another barrage of rockets was launched from Gaza Tuesday, striking targets in Israel's south, where people are preparing for what they expect will be a long war. We visited Negba, where we met Nofar Melek Shalom, a pregnant mother of 2, and a Canadian from London, Ontario.
We stay with our friends in their safe room.
Because why?
Just scared of sleeping in our house right now because there are still terrorists walking around and they don't know where all of them are yet.
This kibbutz, a communal settlement, is designed to be self-sufficient. Hen Levran on the security team said if there is a ground war with more Hamas incursions, he will be ready.
We have a perimeter defense system here with armed guys like me ready. We got, look towers and watch towers. We have communications. We have a war room. We have duct.
Chris Brown reporting from southern Israel tonight. Back in this province, local Jewish groups are holding a vigil tonight for those killed in Israel. The CBC's Liam Britton is at Jackpool Plaza in downtown Vancouver, where people are gathering. Liam, we've heard some of the people speaking. What have they shared?
Well, speaking with these people, what they're talking about is that this attack feels different. It's so horrifying and shocking. People didn't believe it was real at first. And, as people process it, they're thinking about their friends, their family back in Israel. Spoke to some people who are from Israel or have visited Israel. I spoke with Ezra Shankin. He's one of the organizers of today's event. He's with the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver.
So it's not uncommon for us to have people here that are deeply connected to people over there. And one of the things that we've been observing over these last few days is just how interconnected folks are here and how much pain there is within our community.
So yeah, the pain, the horror, the shock, people talking about their mental health and how they will come to grips with what has happened over the last few days and coming together for each other here in Vancouver.
Liam, beyond what we heard from Ezra Shankin, what do organizers want the broader community to know? Do they have a message?
Well, they have a message that they're trying to be here for each other. Israel is so far away that people do feel a little bit helpless. But, you know, just look at this crowd. We're looking at several hundred people behind me here. People have come as far away from Vancouver Island, all across the Lower Mainland. You know, there's a lot of fear in this community, but they're trying to be strong for each other. Not just fear about what's happened, but what may still happen as this conflict drags on, Dan.
CBC's Liam Britton reporting live from Jackpole Plaza tonight. Thank you, Liam. The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians has lasted for decades, both sides fighting for control of land, among other things, often resulting in death and violence. But for many here in Canada, it can be difficult to understand the nuance of this situation. For more, we're joined by Adil Iskander. He is an associate professor of global communication at Simon Fraser University. Adil, of course, more than 70 years of Palestinian and Israeli conflict in this region, a very hard issue. But how, first of all, did we end up, do you think, at this weekend's deadly attacks and Israel's declaration of war against Hamas?
Well, the declaration of war against Hamas is just the latest iteration of a fairly long-standing situation between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Unfortunately, Gaza has been under a 17-year siege, which is an extremely long time. 2.2 million people living in fairly unsustainable circumstances, and that has bred a tremendous amount of discontent and anger. Many of them have been subjected to repeated attacks by Israel and conflict. And of course, many of the inhabitants of Gaza, I think most of your listeners may not know this already, are actually original indigenous communities from the areas across the border in Israel. So this has become, Gaza Strip has become a bit of an open air prison for a lot of the people who were displaced from southern areas that are now Israel. And so the disgruntlement is continuous. And of course, they're ruled and governed by Hamas. It has its own sort of radical ideological perspective. But as a resistance movement, it's gained a lot of support precisely because it stands up to Israel's repeated attacks. On October 7th, we have a significant escalation on the part of Hamas. But of course, it is in response to the conditions that exist inside Gaza. They're basically the product of a complete closure of the strip on the part of both the Israelis and the Egyptians. This is a very, very difficult situation to describe. And of course, now being exacerbated by a very, 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 really kind of an outrageous response. Of course, I know that the attacks against Israelis, both civilians and military, were very jarring and very brazen and deeply heartbreaking. But the response has been really quite disproportionate in some regards. So we can get into that if you want. But
well, during times of crisis, we know misinformation can often run rampant. What is the danger here, perhaps, when onlookers are trying to separate fact, fiction, and versions of truth that appear?
Well, the reality is that both sides are using the media as instruments for the advocacy of their own perspectives. And of course, they have every reason to, because this is existential for both communities. But nevertheless, news verification is really, really critical. It's easy for us to get sucked into these respective kind of spirals where, we hear stories that are, remarkably outrageous. But it is important to note that there is a disproportionality in this regard. Yes, there was a substantial attack in Israel. The cost of life was really, really substantial in comparison to other Hamas attacks. But starting, looking at the numbers today, things have swung in the other direction quite substantially. Now we have about 260 children in Gaza who've been killed by Israeli bombardment, over 990 Palestinians killed, 10 medical centers destroyed, 48 schools, and almost 22,000 homes reduced to rubble. And this disproportionality is part of what has been the case for the last 17 years on the part of Palestinians living in Gaza.
Adil, if I can just jump in, we're running a little short for time. We appreciate your time. Do you see any way out of this conflict that could lessen the deadly impact on civilians, particularly on both sides, whether it's an international force, whether it's Egypt opening its border with Gaza? Is there a way out of this, do you think?
I think the only way forward to a cessation of violence is a rational discussion about a long-term solution for both Gaza and Palestinians that allow them to live outside of occupation so they can live at peace together, side by side, or in the same land for that matter. But this arrangement of complete enclosure and siege is unsustainable and inevitably will continue to reproduce these kinds of violent acts.
Adel Iskander, an associate professor of global communication at Simon Fraser University. Thanks for your time and your perspective today.
Thank you so much.
In the U.S., there is confirmation that several Americans are being held hostage by Hamas, and at least 20 citizens are still missing in Israel. That as President Joe Biden reaffirms his commitment to provide the weapons needed to fight back. Katie Simpson now with just how far the United States says it is willing to go.
The U.S. president looked distraught and sounded angry, delivering his strongest condemnation of the violence yet.
We must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel.
Going into graphic detail, Joe Biden argued Israel has a duty to respond to the brutal attack.
This was an act of sheer evil.
Biden announced additional U.S. military support, including ammunition to replenish Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system, with the first plane load already on the ground. While back in Washington, focus remained on rescuing American captives. 23-year-old Hirsch Goldberg-Polin is among the missing. His mother sharing the heartbreaking details of their last text message exchange.
It said, "I'm sorry," and I took it to mean I love you and I'm sorry because whatever is going to happen is going to cause you tremendous pain and worry.
U.S. warships have now started arriving in the eastern Mediterranean, though their presence is concerning at least one NATO ally. What business does America's aircraft carrier have in Israel? What is it coming to do? Asked the Turkish president. It's going to hit all of Gaza, he said, and commit very serious massacres. But the U.S. National Security Advisor says the ships are about containing the conflict.
To send a clear message of deterrence to other states or non-state actors that might seek to widen this war.
Echoing the president, Jake Sullivan vowed unwavering support for Israel, making no public demands of restraint.
And I'm not here to draw red lines or issue warnings or give lectures to anybody.
The White House will ask Congress to prioritize additional spending packages for Israel. That can't happen until a new House Speaker is elected, which lawmakers hope is finally sorted out before the week is over. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.